And we're live. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Rving in New England, and a little bit of a snowfall here tonight. How you doing, Jen?
I'm doing good, but Bob, I don't know if I can be able to get home with that snow if it accumulates. They say sometimes 2 inches an hour in New England.
Well, it
So
could
I
be
don't know.
could be difficult.
Could
Although,
be difficult. It could be a long ride home. The other thing that I'm having trouble with is that how come my picture is not in the big screen and just the logo is? I mean, when you got a star like me to work with, I think my contract said that I had to be posted bigger than you.
well, see, the problem is we'd have to decide which one of us goes in the other block. So we're probably in pretty good shape just putting Rving in New England in there and save the aggravation.
Yeah. Now, does this new technology um, allow the snow to accumulate in the bottom right side of that
No,
screen?
it doesn't accumulate. It actually recycles. It goes down the bottom and comes back up to the top again, kind of like a floating waterfall type of thing.
So we are basically we are in a human fishbowl there, the thing there. Where do you shake it up?
Yeah, the little
Christmas
snow
tree.
globe. Yeah, the little snow globes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Well,
the sad thing about this show tonight is that two of the first guests are in Florida. One is in Massachusetts and one is in North Carolina. So, us in Audrey are really the only ones that can relate to the snow. The others are saying, you know, not only are those guys crazy to be in the snow, but they're promoting the fact on an international broadcast.
well,
What is that?
I thought it'd be a nice touch for Walter because he's such a smart ass posting all the Florida temperatures all week, and then tonight he posted a picture of lilies on the lake with the lake in the background while he's eating his coconut shrimp. I think he's just trying to rub it in.
Yeah, but Bob, you got to keep one thing in mind. Walter is not guilty alone with that. Andy last week said, "Oh, it's nice in Florida," and then he posted the temperature. Now,
Right.
from what I understand, is that tomorrow night and into Friday, it's going to be warmer here than in Florida,
That's correct.
but it will also be torrential rain.
So they should probably, so Walter should hurry home and Andy can just hibernate.
Yeah, and let me tell you, it's so funny that whenever we make a comment, a guest pops up that's appropriate because with all the rain, that means some people with RVs are going to see that there's a leak in their roof, and Jim Conboy is exactly the person to be able to solve that issue with New England RV Roof.
That's a very good point.
Jim, I'm sure that you have been encouraging the meteorologists at the TV stations in the Boston area to say that rain is going to be extremely heavy and a flood watch and all that other stuff. And, it's people like you that prey on us poor RVers that are dependent upon the weather to be able to allow us to RV. I just don't think it's fair, Bob.
I know it's terrible. So Susan Carpenter is on. Merry Christmas, gentlemen. Well, she went now. When she says Merry Christmas, gentlemen, she must be referring to me, Andy, and Walter.
No, she says gentleman
Well,
with an A.
I don't know. So look at we got Indiana, we got Florida, we got Massachusetts. Kathy, where are you from? Kathy Wheeler. Hello. Andy down there in Florida, like you say, Mark in North Carolina. Yeah,
Yep.
This is a pretty good crowd. All right,
And Andy thinks he's Willard Scott because he's saying 68 now, in the 30s tomorrow night, and back in the 70s next week.
And then Brian Gumbel just looks at him and shakes his head. Did you see the post that I should put a link in. Did you see the post I just shared? Andy put up one of his gadget guru electronic gifts from 1990, 30 years ago. And he was with Deborah Norville. Number one, I didn't realize she was so tall or Andy was so short. But 30 years ago, talking about electronic gifts. We'll post that link on there.
If I was Willard, I'd be
preparing to wish John a happy
100th.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. Andy, I've been polite. Bob is making derogatory comments about your height or lack thereof.
and he did look quite young then too.
He did. He
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Now, it's important to say for those folks that are waiting for a special national guest this week, the special national guests are Bob Zagami and John DePietro. And we've got a great show lined up because this is kind of like, at the end of the year, they play the greatest hits of the past year. That week between Christmas and New Year's when all the media people kind of take the week off and they have all the tape shows. We don't do that. We're here live, and we are going to tell you some of the crazy stories that took place this past year. And folks, let me welcome you to the show and welcome you to participate, because by making the comments over on the right side, which you do with certainly no degree of shyness at all, if there's a topic that you think was the main highlight of 2020, obviously a little bit more specific than COVID, let us know, and you can lead us in that part of the discussion. And Jerry is here, so it's officially. Andy says he's vertically challenged, and yes, in that video, I was 30 years younger. So what would that be, 1990?
Oh, 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1990.
Yeah. Exactly. So Andy.
I'm curious, how many of our fans that are on tonight watched Andy Parr on the Today Show 30 years ago? It may only be me and you. Now, Swenson must have done it. Walter must have watched it.
He might not even been born yet, but he had some kind of technology that allowed him to do that. Jerry, I was happy to hear that Bob Tiffin. Oh, yes. Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
That was one about what we did was we printed out a list of a lot of the highlights that were posted in daily newsletters, but we don't have to go to that list. But Jerry brings up a very good point, because most of you may know by now, Thor Industries purchased Tiffin Motorhomes for just a token $300 million. And they had $800 million in sales. But Bob Tiffin, at 78 years old, put out a video, said he was staying around, and Bob Martin wants him to stay around. Speaking about Bob Martin, what about Bob Martin, John?
Well, folks, you know what? Again, the last week of the year is the time that people kind of just like mail it in, but we're not mailing it in. We've got the #1 RV executive in the world. Not in Central Mass, not in Western Mass, not in New England, not in the East Coast, but the world. Bob Martin, who will be joining us right here, and same time, same place next week. He knows the rules of the show. He is open to taking any questions and comments. And more importantly, we don't want to say, oh, I've got this thing and this, and why do you like this brand? Let's kind of talk about, where the industry is going, because right now you've got 3 manufacturers, 3 companies that control 80 to 85% of the industry. And you know what? The difference between what Bob Martin does is when they buy another company, they pretty much leave them alone. And I know there was a lot of conversation on the internet right after that announcement was made a couple of days ago. That is, are the Tiffin boys going to be thrown out and replaced by people that are accountants but not RVers? And
look at Audrey's comment.
Yep.
Expand on that a little bit, Audrey, if you will. I've seen some comments too. I think anytime somebody buys somebody else, there's consternation about who's going to stay and who's going to go, and how much impact the new corporate entity might have. But to John's point, the one thing that Thor does do is keep all of their operating divisions decentralized. So they don't share purchasing, they don't share HR, they don't share anything. They run on their own, and he readily admits that they, in fact, in many cases, will compete against each other, and may the best company win.
Yep. Which is really kind of the opposite of the way corporate America or corporate world operates, because you get that thing called economies of scale, where you can buy tires cheaper if everybody has the same tire. You can buy cabinets cheaper if everybody buys the same cabinets. But I think Tiffin is very much like Winnebago. They make a lot of their own components themselves. They make their own cabinets. They have their own paint shops and that type of thing. So, Audrey, what are you seeing the Tiffin Group saying? Are they thinking that it's been commercialized and you won't have the opportunity to reach Bob Tiffin? If that's the case, and again, it's only the first week, and in reality, the merger hasn't. It's really not a merger, though, Bob, is it? Mergers and takeovers are not the same word.
Not quite. No.
But it's not a hostile takeover. It's not, a stock purchase, that type of thing. And we have had Bob Tiffin on many, many interviews that we've played on this show. And he truly lives the business. And like he said, even though I'm 78, I don't plan on slowing down. I mean, he's smart enough to realize he's not going to be there forever, but he's not slowing down. And he says, we're not changing a thing. I'll still be at the same phone number. I'll still answer the calls. So, basically what it does, it gives them access to more capital to grow.
Walter brings up a good point. Consolidation is going to hurt the consumer. Maybe not tomorrow, but history shows industry consolidation is damaging to the consumer. I think you have a very valid point, Walter. And if you look at this industry today, we see consolidation at every level. We see the manufacturers being acquired. We see dealers being acquired by large mega dealers. We see suppliers being acquired. Patrick Industries and LCI scoop up a lot of the smaller supplier companies. What we don't see just yet is any consolidation in the campground industry. That's probably the only segment of our industry that we don't see it. And I think in 5 years you're going to see 4 or 5, maybe 6 really big mega dealers like a Campers Inn, Campers World, Lazy Days, RV retailers, General RV. You're going to see a lot of those, and then you're going to see a lot of small and medium companies. And I always argue that that's not, it could be bad for the consumer. It could be good for the consumer, because the small to medium companies, dealerships that survive will be those that provide excellent service, both from a customer service standpoint, also technical service standpoint, and good sales and after sales support. Because as with any industry that consolidates a lot, the small people show up again, or the entrepreneurs that sold out come back and start another company.
As is the case with Grand Design.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All good points, everybody. But let's go back, Bob. And, every year, the new year begins with the month of January, but this January was not much going on. February was not much going on. In fact, even in January and February, the projections for RV shipments for 2020 was that they were going to be down 4% over 2019, which was either a record year or close to a record year. Yeah. So when we came out of that Winnebago meeting in March 13th, specifically, Friday, March 13th, when we're flying back to the East Coast from Palm Springs, the world kind of changed that day, and that really was kind of like the first day of 2020 that anybody remembers. And if you remember correctly, a day or two later, you and I went over to Fuller Motorhome in Boylston, Mass, and we taped a video saying, based upon what we think is going to go on, if you're going to be RVing this summer, you better make your reservations soon.
Yep.
And not to say that we were right, but we was right. And, anybody who wanted to rent a unit this year, anybody who wanted to buy something off the lot and have their choice of, 10 or 12 units, if they didn't have that RV in their yard, signed, sealed, and delivered by the middle of May or early June, they didn't see it, or they had to just pick what was left. And, that was that.
Well, Jerry says Thor has a history with the Airstream. I'm sure that cult was screaming when Thor bought them. Quality seems to have been maintained. Actually, Jerry, when Thor was formed, and the TH is for Wade Thompson and the OR was for Peter Orthwine, when they purchased Airstream was on a downhill slide. and their quality was really being questionable, and they were losing a lot of the luster of the iconic brand. So they actually made the investments to bring Airstream back, and to put it where it is today. Now, I would argue that some of that Airstream quality is now starting to show the same signs as a lot of manufacturers during the pandemic, in that the quality is suffering. We've seen complaints on forums from Airstream as much as we have for a $20,000 travel trailer. So the industry has to get a lot more responsible when it comes to building them better and servicing, supporting, as we've talked about many times on the show. This generation of first-time buyers that are responsible for 50 to 80% of the new units that are being sold today have never owned an RV, and they are not going to tolerate what many of us, I mean, I've been RVing for 40 years. John's been RVing for 30 years. They're not going to tolerate what previous generations had done.
No, this group of consumers is not going to be sitting back and saying, "Oh yeah, if it leaks, no big deal. I'll deal with that." But we got a couple interesting comments here. Andy's comment about Thor wasn't even formed until the Airstream purchase took place.
That's right. They were formed. That was the first company that they purchased. And Susan brings up another topic for discussion. Susan says, talking about startup companies, the rental and RV share companies did very well this year. They did exceptionally. I saw one of the figures. Outdoorsy was up 4,500% this year, and RV share raised $100 million in investment capital this year. And now we've got RVZ in there. We got Rent, RV and Go. We got the Rental Connection. There's several peer-to-peer. And that is, although when we had RVZ on the show, some of the comments, a lot of people still say they will not do it, but I would argue that people are doing it and they're just not telling their friends they're doing it.
But here's a very interesting aspect of that whole story, where you talk about those companies with absolutely phenomenal growth over the prior year. After we did that show, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, with RV Easy, which are nice people from Canada. They had 2,500 transactions in Canada, or 25,000, whatever.
Yeah.
So they're just coming into the U.S. I posted that on several national Facebook pages. For example, RV Tips, and we had those people, Ed Hulbert, on with us earlier this year. The comments were 99% to 1% about, no way in the world would I ever consider renting out my RV. And that's probably the cleanest one that I can read. However, who are the people that are renting out their RVs if these rental companies are seeing such gigantic increases in their business?
Well, that's it. It's kind of like, a topic that, you don't talk politics with your family, and maybe you don't talk peer-to-peer rentals with your camping buddies either. You just do it when you want to do it and pick up a few bucks on the side, because it certainly is an investment that pays off. Just ask Walter. Walter says, Airstream, Integra, DRV, Redwood, and Van Lee all produce quality rigs. All rigs have problems, but these represent some good quality brands. They do indeed. I would, DRV, Redwood, Van Lee are fifth wheel companies. I'd probably throw Alliance in there now, and Grand Design, unless somebody wants to take exception to that. Airstream does do exceptional quality. And Integra, when we talk about consolidation, don't forget, Integra was the National Supreme that was bought by Jayco, that was bought by Thor. So you had two major sales in there, and Integra is still a good quality motorhome. Right?
The big diesel pushers.
Yeah. Well, they even have a Mercedes-Benz unit now, and they got Class Cs now.
And they kind of break away from the Jayco name and just go on the Integra.
Well, they do, but when they added the ones on the bottom end, when they got away from the big diesel, they didn't get away from the big diesel pushes. But when they started putting in Class C's and the Mercedes Benz, I would argue that those are probably coming out of the Jayco factory with just a different nameplate on it. On that. Walter says, did the rental? Walter says, I did the rental, and it is interesting to run and involves some serious work. It's not easy, and working with the public always can be a challenge. What about the other aspect of it, Walter? And I've never heard you mention it, but what about the fact that you have to give up some of your personal camping time so that somebody can, rent one of your units, not your fifth wheel, but your fifth wheel standing there idle in the driveway while you're taking care of a customer who's renting I think it's a Springdale, and then you don't get to go camping. So what about that? How much did that play on you and the family this year?
Well, I think it's important to point out, unless I'm wrong here, but I don't think Walter rents his private unit out.
No, he doesn't rent the fifth wheel. He bought a travel trailer to rent.
Right. And that's different emotionally. I mean, that was a business decision to make that, with no emotional attachment to that unit.
I was tying the emotion into the fact that while you're sitting in the driveway cleaning up the rental unit, looking at your fifth wheel, and you're not going camping.
Yep.
The other guy's paying you a few bucks. He's going to be in the campground, or she's going to be in the campground, and you're going to be home. So the emotion of not being able to fully utilize your own RV during the very short camping season that we have up here.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? There's so many good comments, Bob. You want to read any of them going back to...
Yeah, let me just finish up on Walter. He says, yes, doing deliveries and pickups takes time, and we had to arrange for some other people to deal with the business while we were gone. That's good. Estelle Drew's with us. Hello, Estelle. Jerry's going to rent out his Safari to a friend next month. If I can ask, Jerry, are you doing that as a one-on-one with your own rig, or did you put it through a peer-to-peer? Because there's a lot more risk and liability for you doing it on your own than picking up the conveniences of a peer-to-peer network. Walter says, many of the people I talk with outdoorsy have 2 to 4 units that they rent only. Most of the ones that were renting their own rig due to emotional attachment stopped after their baby was damaged.
And that's it. That's exactly it. It's like, we have
Frank Case says, took your recent advice, got early June reservation in the North Shore. Well, I'll tell you, you got to make those reservations because campgrounds are exploding. Who else we got? Randy Murray. I'm recognizing Randy down the bottom. Randy's on the show a couple of times a year to keep us honest on some of our service stuff. Happy holidays. Randy says, happy holidays, gentlemen. Have a safe and happy season. We have some surprises for you in the new year. Well, guess what, Randy? I might already know what the surprises are, but I'm not going to say anything.
We need to call a timeout for 1 second here.
Yeah.
Because the thing that we have not done yet, I don't think that we've used the exact words, is we haven't taken a second to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
We haven't.
And I don't know if that's politically correct to say that. I know there's every different holiday imaginable, but you know what? This is our Christmas.
Our Jewish friends who just celebrated Hanukkah.
Yep.
It too. So
our red and green on. If you're colorblind, you're okay. If you're not, I'm lying. But it's one of those crazy times because there are people that are going to be spending a lot of time with their family or not spending a lot of time with their family
right
during the next couple of weeks. But the key to the thing that we talk about all year long, just about every show, is that RVing is a way that families get the opportunity to stay closer together. And unfortunately for us folks in the North and the Northeast, we don't have the opportunity to camp like folks do in the South and the Southwest. So you guys that can camp with your family during the Christmas holidays, we admire you and envy you. So don't take it lightly, because who knows where this COVID thing is going. It's coming up on its first anniversary. And whatever you read, it's not good as far as that is concerned. But at the same time, it's more opportunity for the RV investment that most of us have made to even pay greater dividends to all of us through increased use, and not necessarily in the traditional way, because we see so many of the Class B people, the younger people, they're going out into the vast unknown to do their camping.
Let me catch up here. Dan Craffey from Lee's Family Trailer Sales says, busy 2001 coming up. Merry Christmas. Well, Dan, if you're any more busy in 2021 than you were in 2020, you're going to need a lot more room up there to accommodate all those RVs that you're selling. By the way, many people don't know, Lee's Family Trailer Sales is the #1 RV dealer in Maine, and the #1 motorhome dealer in Maine, and the number one fifth wheel dealer in Maine. I think they took all the titles up in Maine for 2020. Ronnie Layberger's here from Bradford RV. Great evening to all. Nice to have you, Ronnie.
See what he said? He didn't say good evening. He said great evening.
Well,
Thank you.
It is a great evening because he's on our program.
Mr. Superlative.
Yeah. So we left. Hey, John, we left off in March when we got slotted at the Winnebago National Dealer Meeting. But I think you may have caused the problem because you were all over doing interviews with Brian Hazelton. Although Brian could probably say that this interview that you did with him at the Winnebago Dealer Meeting was so good, he got promoted to senior vice president of motorized and towables.
Yep.
Towables. Yeah.
And we talked to him again a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. And if you remember when Brian was on about a month ago, yeah, and they were talking about the new, all the new product introductions. The one that got the most play and is still getting play is the new Echo. Tell them a little bit about that, John, because that thing is, dealers are selling them. They won't get delivered till the spring, and they're already taking orders for them.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was just alluding to the fact that many of the new RVers, people in their 30s and early 40s that are entering the RV lifestyle for the first time, they're not necessarily the people that want to go to a campground, hook up, and stay there all weekend, and their only exercise be getting out of the chair to put another log on the fire. These are people that want to be out in the wide open. They want to be in the wilderness areas. They want to have tons of solar because they want to get their energy from the sun. And Winnebago realized that with the Reving, but realized that it was a smaller Class B that didn't give the opportunity to have a full bed. And I think that was one of the things that Brian talked about. The Echo, which is on a Ford Transit body, gives the new owner the opportunity to have a full bed and not a cot or an MRI table, as some of them are in the small Class Bs. But it will allow them to go off-road and have a lot more solar and have a lot more creature comforts at the same time. And I think that is going to be a home run. I don't think it's available till February or March.
Yeah.
But a few of the people that I've interviewed on a couple of other shows that we do have said, man, put me in touch with Winnebago because I'm very interested in that. So,
yeah. And one of the other things right around that same time, kind of in the April timeframe, was Tom and Galen Bailey at Bailey's Camping Resort. They defended for all the campgrounds in Maine. They sued the state of Maine and fought for the campgrounds because the closure restrictions and the quarantine restrictions cost the Maine campgrounds a lot of business, and the restaurants, and almost killed their tourist business this year. And we understand the importance, and we don't, discredit the pandemic, but there's ways to do things and there's ways not to do things, and complete overreaction up there. And they wound up having, I think Tom and Galen said they wound up actually having a better year than the year before, and they missed a month or so at the beginning, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're running high capacity even in the weekdays. And the other thing that Bailey's did, because Bailey's, interesting, Bailey's teams up with Pete's, okay? And they have, I think, 30 or 40 brand new or 1 year old travel trailers that are put on site that are already hooked up. So the person who wants to experience the camping lifestyle can do so just by driving to the campground. And they don't have to haul the trailer with them. They don't need the big, Ram pickup or Ford 350, whatever the case. And they can spend all their time RVing and not traveling from point A to point B. And the people that we talked to, because when we went up there for the week with our family, the people that we talked to in the rental units all said that they want to buy one. So the people that are being introduced to RVing through a rental opportunity they're turning from RV renters into RV owners. I think that's the easiest way to say it.
I'd be curious, and Walter, I think, has done the most research of most of our fans, but Walter, what percentage of the units that go out through, say, an RV share or outdoorsy, got any idea for what percentage are actually delivered to a campground? Because you mentioned that in your note that, you deliver and you pick up in the campgrounds. Is that a relatively small portion? Certainly would be mostly towables and travel trailers.
Right.
Speak to just towables and travel. I'd be curious to have your impression there. The stuff that you made.
We'll do the research during the show and have the answer back to us in a few minutes.
Estelle says she made camping reservations today at Meredith Woods for August of next year. Smart woman, Estelle. Maria Galante Moore is on. Merry Christmas to you both. Thank you, Maria. Walter says Merry Christmas. Audrey says State of Mass Parks, Cusset, Horseneck Beach, can't make reservations. They have shut down reserveamerica.com for reservations, waiting to see what 2021 will bring. That's interesting because Jerry camps down there a lot at Scusset also. Maria's spending Christmas in her fifth wheel at my daughter's. So she's socially distancing, but in her wheel. That's a pretty good idea.
Where is she, Rob?
Maria, she's home. I think she's back here. Yeah, where are you, Maria? Did you head south? Are you going to be spending the fifth wheel outdoors in New England? Jerry says inspection business was busy this year as well. I can believe that. Walter says peer-to-peer for RV rental apps, Outdoorsy, RV to share, RVC, etc. is going to be very crowded next year. Wonder how much that will impact clients' leads with new applications coming online this winter. Well, like I said, Walt, I mean that's an astonishing number that Outdoorsy was up 4,500%. And we don't expect this to slow down next year. I mean, 2021 is going to be just as busy, both from a standpoint of RV sales and peer-to-peer rentals.
And you know what, Bob? When you look at that number of sales increase, they're doing it without owning an inventory.
Yeah.
So, when you look at people like, El Monte and Reserve America, not Reserve, Cruise America and Fuller. And even when Flag got into the rental business, they had to buy 10, 20 or 30 units. There's a high degree of buy-in in that. However, the rental companies, since it's not their own inventory, they can get into it for the cost of a computer as opposed to the cost of a computer plus a mechanic plus a buying the unit themselves.
Yeah. So Jim Roy joined us. Welcome, Jim. Brad Moore from Bradford RV. And Brad, I think, is closed now until after January. I know I posted them last night, the dealers that have sent their information through. We posted that, so I think they're closing at noon tomorrow, if my memory serves me correctly. Brad will correct me if I'm wrong. Frank Head says, I did go on Reserve America and got my reservation through that site with no problems. Salem Winter Island Park, no issues. They did spread out social distancing, opening every other trailer site on the loop field. That's interesting.
think that's a private. It might be a city run. I don't think it's a
Winter
state.
Island Park. Well, if it's in Reserve America, I don't know.
Yeah.
Walter says Class Bs are the big rental requests from what I'm hearing from others in outdoorsing. That's true because that's the fastest growing segment of our industry. So why not try them out a little bit beforehand?
And that's really amazing because a few years ago, 5, 7, 8 years ago, you couldn't. Class Bs were like for people who couldn't afford a C or an A.
Yeah, we couldn't get the dealers to even want to talk about them. Never mind put them on the lot. And now they're yelling because they can't get enough of them.
Yep.
In Convoy says, I'm committed another year at State Line Campground, so I would not have to worry. Okay. Is that Rhode Island or is that Southeast Mass, Jim? I think that must be Rhode Island. State Line, or probably sitting right on the border. Not worried about a place to camp. Walter Swenson, women. Biggest share of people running a rental business are women who are home, maybe with the kids, but doing all the RV business management and check out, check in, men doing some of the repair work as such. Okay.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Susan Carpenter should be talking to those women.
Yeah. Dante, he's late again. I don't know, Dante.
There should almost be a rental association because, dealers all get into associations for best practices, but the rental people all kind of do things differently. And, I'm sure Walt learned.
Within RVDA, we have the RV Rental Association, but that's for dealers that rent, and I don't think they'd be allowed to join that because they'd be competing against the dealers unless they wanted to join RVDA. They could join I bet they could join RVRA because underneath RVDA, we have the RVRA, which is the RV Rental Association. So I would imagine peer-to-peers, or even people like Walter's point, where you got people that buy 3 or 4 units and rent them out as a business, they may be able to post up there at RVRA to do that. Jim Roy, 99% of our clients in the vintage camper world are women. That's interesting.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, that is a big number.
Oof. And I would have thought the exact opposite would have been true with that. But
no, because they wanted the restoration done, and their husband started to do it. He was inept, and she said, "I'm taking it to Jim Roy in Maine. I don't care what you pay."
Paper's on the microphone.
Oh yeah. You're right.
So.
Who else got a question? Audrey says, as we say, the guys are transportation and sanitation. Yes, Audrey, you have in fact uttered those very same words on this program before. And you are right. You are right. So when we woke up in May, we found out that although the manufacturers had shut down for 6 weeks, all of a sudden people were buying RVs in large numbers, and they started to flood the dealers' lots and buy all these new RVs, which unfortunately come towards the end of the season. The suppliers were playing catch up. The manufacturers playing catch up. They couldn't deliver the inventory that the dealers had purchased because they didn't have some of the supplies. They had units waiting in Elkhart that were missing an air conditioner or toilet or a window or whatever. But they're coming back on board, and the deliveries are better right now. Most of our dealers are glad to see our in every week, but some of the dealers are still pretty low in inventory, so it's still
those not those units that weren't totally built out properly before they were sent to the dealership and ultimately got into the hands of the consumer. One of the points that we saw that Bob Martin make in his interview with Bob Tiffin is that they could never move Tiffin to Elkhart and build because there's nobody left to work in Elkhart. And he said that when they were doing their due diligence about checking out Tiffin, that because of where Tiffin's located in Red Bay, Alabama, they're already a major employer there, but there's a good workforce. And that's very important when, if Thor had a different opportunity that they were going to centralize everything, then
Hmm.
we're in trouble, because there's not enough able bodies to do the work in Elkhart. 2 years ago, when we were there, my wife and I saw the sign on a building that was making some component parts. It said, "No diploma, no GED needed. Come right in, work today."
Yep.
No diploma, no GED. Come right in, work today.
All right. Before you do your share, Walter says, and I did miss it, Walter, but delivery for rentals, those people who are putting their units into a peer-to-peer rental fleet and delivering it to a campground, it's about 30% overall. But
Okay.
fifth wheels, it jumps to 90%. So people are renting their fifth wheels and delivering to a campground for something. That's got to be great money for them.
Well, and it's smart too, Bob, because do you want a first timer driving your fifth wheel
Nope.
and trying to back it in?
Nope. All right, you can do your commercial now.
They have the advantage without having the chore of doing that. So, as we say at just about this time every week, a special thank you to our live audience, and want to tell you that whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, to share it with others. And we're more and more into YouTube because it gets us into different places right now, so that if you're looking at it on YouTube, then there's a share button right down below, and also right near the share button, just a little bit more to the right and down one line, there's a little red button that says subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, and then a bell pops up. Ring the bell, and then every show that we do will come directly to your email without you having to go search for it all over the internet. So like us, share us, and subscribe, and we'd be, as they say on Andy Griffith, we'd be mighty obliged.
Hey, Walter got a good point. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here. Can you read that one, John? And this is going to be a very interesting case, and it will wind up in the Supreme Court.
Yep. Remote workers need to watch the Supreme Court for the upcoming income tax battle coming up. It could change the way states look at remote workers for the purpose of taxes. Now, many of us may be aware of the fact that Amazon hires tons of seasonal workers that are RVers. In fact, some of the Amazon facilities down south have RV parks built. I shouldn't say RV parks. They have RV facilities right there. And I asked, when we were, I think, in Hershey a couple of years ago, I asked the recruiter for Amazon, what's with this affinity toward RVers? And they said they're mature and reliable and dependable, and we set up a bonus system, so if they stay the whole season, they get handsomely rewarded.
Okay, but that's not what Walter's talking about, because that's a 1099 contractor, and they can do what they want there. They're just going to file their own taxes. But for instance, here in Massachusetts, Governor Baker is trying to tax the people who live in New Hampshire who are now not coming to Massachusetts. They work for a Massachusetts company, but they live in New Hampshire. And several other states have jumped on this because these people are not going into the adjoining state and spending their money and being taxed because they were sitting in an office building. So somebody has to decide, are they going to charge tax? And, given the way our country loves to and states love to tax people, they could be on the losing end of this. But that's going to show up in the Supreme Court. And that, and a lot of people who all of a sudden found out they like working at home, that presents some interesting challenges. Mm-hmm. And speaking about working from home, how about working from the school? I mean, working from the road and taking your kids. Talk to that, John, about road schooling, and see if we got any of our fans that are doing it.
An absolutely huge phenomenon. In fact, I've done several interviews with families on the road this summer. We were up in, interestingly, because one of the other topics is Harvest Host. We were at a Harvest Host golf course just outside of Bar Harbor, or as my wife would say, Bahaba. And we came across a family that, oh man, I got their card here somewhere. But they had California plates, and RVers always talk to each other. So in the morning, they had come from San Diego on the Pacific Ocean and had just been to Lubec, Maine, the easternmost point in the United States, and they had their two kids with them that were about 10 and 7. And they were able to hit the road in March because the kids were going to be remote for the rest of the year. So that is just a small percentage of people that are hitting the road because the parents are finding out that in many cases, their job allows them to work from the road as well. So if you're parked in a campground or in a schoolyard, the same activity is taking place.
Jerry's got a question for you.
Where is it? Oh, a road scholar. You know what? Thank you, Jerry. There is a trucking company that says Road Scholar that's out there, but thank you so much.
I spoke 2 days ago with a friend who is a dealer in Florida. Tampa RV Super Show still on as of Monday. That's correct. As of right now, the only thing canceled was Industry Day to give them more time to set up. But as of right now, however, when we look ahead, our show is scheduled for April, and we're still on. Where the contracts are out to the dealers, and we hope to have the show. But Hartford is gone this year for 2021. Hartford's out, Worcester's out, Springfield is out, and I think New Hampshire's going to be out. I talked to Jeremy the other day, so there won't be a lot of shows, and there'll be more activity. And of course, NRVDA will respond the way that our dealers want us to respond. But shows are, they're going to be interesting in terms of how the consumer goes with it. And Tampa's going to be the bell ringer. That'll tell us. That's the other one. Brad Moore said also Providence has canceled also, but Providence is out. So that's going to be interesting. So we're going to be pushing a lot of the activity at the dealers' lots. And don't forget, one of the things that we've done, John and I were so far ahead of the curve. For 3 years now, we have been doing April is RV month in New England. And this year, more than ever, it's going to be RV month in New England. So we've got a couple of things, and some of the dealers are planning some special things themselves. But we're also going to have something. I hope to have an entire campaign with all of our dealers with regionalized open houses and stuff. So stay tuned for that after the holidays. But I want to get through Tampa and see what happens.
Amazingly interesting because it's not a local show; it's a national show. People plan their travel calendar to be in January in Florida for that show, and that is really going to be interesting because again, it's on right now. What is that? 3 weeks from the January 13 through 17, right? So that's 3 weeks away. It's going to be very interesting to see if there are any hot states that they recommend not traveling to. And it would be interesting to see what happens in the weeks after that show, if there are any traceable figures as to people that may have contracted COVID based upon going to that show. So,
well, even back in June, there were stories that were printed about campground reservations booked solid for the year. And, we cannot say that enough, that if you're going to be out there and you can control the dates that you're going to be on vacation or taking long weekends in 2021 or just a regular weekend, you have got to make those reservations now. I would spend the week between Christmas and New Year's making your campground reservations, because between the overwhelming increase in RV sales across the country, and our dealers, I can show you some of our dealers that have absolutely no new inventory on their lots. I can show you others that are low. And I was down to see Brad. Brad's got a note on here that he's got new inventory in there. I was down to see Brad, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, and and I was surprised. His lot was very full. So, and he mentioned that they were starting to come through from Elkhart again. So I think I've seen that at 2 or 3 other dealers also. So the dealers are stocking up, and now would be a good time to buy one and get it all set and get it ready to go for next summer. But you got to have some place to go, and that's the other aspect of it. John, talk about the Boondockers Welcome and Harvest Host and how that relieves a lot of the problem.
Well, the thing is this. Campgrounds have finite number of spaces, period. I mean, if it's got 100 sites, it's got 100 sites, and they can't make it bigger during, high demand periods. So if people are going to be out there, they've got to look at alternate locations. And the thing that we've found is that everybody that we know that has joined Harvest Host has said, I wish I had done this before. Now, it's not to say don't ever go to a campground, but it's, hey, use it to supplement the campground. So if you want to do 3 nights in the campground and 2 nights unplugged, if you will, and you can do that, and you can still stay in the same neighborhood. I mean, some people don't want to stay in a campground 7 nights, but they want to stay in a region for 7 nights. So they could supplement that with Harvest Host. Bob, do we have a link here that people can sign up? Is there a way you can find our link that if people want to sign up, they can?
I will post it afterwards. We only got a couple of minutes left here. What do we got? Yeah, I will post that along with the other ones that we mentioned, and also
Harvest Hosts. Boondockers Welcome, which is another organization that allows you to. I don't think it's a 1-for-1, but you can make space available in your yard for an RVer who's traveling from point A to point B and needs 1 night or 2 nights to stay, certainly not a week at a time. Some have hookups, some don't. But again, it's another option. Now, another thing to keep in mind, and we had a guest on just before, somewhere in the middle of June last year, and it might have been Joel Holland from Harvest Host, where he said, even though the website of a campground may say sold out, always call on the day that you want to go within a couple of hours, because there are cancellations. And the bigger the campground, the greater the opportunity for the cancellation. And I know that it was 4th of July this year. We didn't know where we were going to be, so we didn't make the far out reservation. And we were up in Newport, Vermont, and they had spots for 2 of us. And it was a great little town.
Yeah,
we got it at the last minute.
Yeah, Andy's got a note that says Florida COVID numbers are through the roof. If there is a post-Christmas holiday surge, I'll be surprised if the Super Show opens. Walter says January 3rd to 6th COVID numbers, I think, will drive their decisions. From a consumer standpoint, Walter, what are you hearing? Because you must have RV friends in Florida. So from a consumer standpoint, what are you hearing? And the shows are important. I mean, dealers want the shows because consumers like to go to the shows. They want to see, feel, and touch. But if we looked at Europe in September at the Caravan Salon, which in 2020, when I went over, 2019, they had 278,000 people in 9 days. They still held the show this year, although Heimer and several other major European manufacturers pulled out. But they spaced out the units out, and they still drew 107,000 people, and that's a really good number. So it shows. I think now Tampa typically would get about 70, maybe 75,000 people in 5 days, and I'm sure they'd be very happy if they got 35 or 40,000 if they can open the show, because people want to go to shows. Frank thanks Audrey for the information on Scusset. Maybe we'll use my Harvest Host instead. I will say that Winter Island refunded me 100% on my early 2020 reservation. They were very understanding and empathetic to us campers. Eric Teller. Hey, Eric. So I've used both Boondockers and Harvest Host on my way down to Florida. They are great if it's on my path going to a museum. Used a lot of state parks in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. I'm curious, Eric, because I've never stayed at Boondockers Welcome. What's the major difference between my understanding or my thought process is Harvest Host is wineries and beers and museums and
Commercial.
is Boondockers the same thing, or is it more out in the wilderness like Hip Camp, or is it in people's driveways?
But it's generally a person's yard.
On Boondockers Welcome?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Walter says people want shows but are very conflicted over being exposed due to crowding. Understandable. Jerry Plant says, if I said to Gene, we're going to stay one night at a no hookup site for
$95.
I said to Gene, we're going to stay one night at a no hookup site for $95. I can't put her response on here, but that's what happened on our first Harvest Host stay at a vineyard in Cape May. But that's the rules at Harvest Host, Jerry. You have to be self-contained. So I'm not sure how to read your note. So was Gene pleased after you stayed at such a site? Or did she not let you, but you obviously stayed there. So you clarify that one a little bit, if you would.
Yeah.
You're saying something?
No, Jerry's thing was, I was confused by what he meant by it. I think because no hookups. Now, what I will say, on several Harvest Host facilities that we've used over the past 3-4 years, I have asked, hey, can I plug in? And 3 out of the 4 places allowed us to plug in. Not running big air conditioners. I said, again, I'm dealing with a Class C. I'm not dealing with Audrey's big diesel pusher, but they allowed me to plug in. And again, ask politely, and don't put out 4 slides in your awning. And sometimes you can get power out of it. You're not going to get
something that along those lines, and Walter, our resident engineer, could probably speak to this, or Andy Parr for sure. There's that new product called Soft Start that allows you to start your air conditioners with just a regular 120 volt line. It doesn't have the big draws. We don't have enough time to talk about it tonight, but that's getting a lot of attention also.
Walter, I think I see what Jerry meant.
Yeah.
We spent $95 for wine. Well, Jerry, you got out cheap, because the $75 that we've saved from the campground fee went right into the wine collection that my wife did. The other crazy thing that you'll see at Harvest Host, especially we saw it in New England and New York, upstate New York, is the wide variety of food that's available at these establishments. That's different than your fast food that you'd stop at on the highway. Especially I'm still thinking of those cider donuts.
Yeah.
Up in somewhere in, where were we? I don't know, somewhere in New York. But
no, it was Massachusetts, wasn't it? Was it Baldwinville or Red Apple Farm? Was it Red Apple Farm?
Yep, they had them. Yep.
Yeah.
And there was up in New Hampshire. But anyway, Andy
jumped right in there. He says, based on my conversation with Airstream, because Andy's got an Airstream interstate motorhome, the soft start with the lithium package will not allow you to run the AC off of batteries in an interstate. Interesting. Okay, so we are pretty close. God, are we 7:59? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Well, so we missed if we didn't once again thank Chris Andrew from Hemlock Hill, or congratulate him becoming the RVDA chairman. So you'll see a lot of his. We'll have him on later on, early in next year as we get into the camping season to do that. And the Trailer Life and Motorhome are gone with the December issue. In January, Camping World brings out the new RV magazine. That's actually the title of it. And then Marcus had a press release conference this week with Lordstown Electric, who's making an electric pickup truck, which is another topic maybe we should cover next year. But they're going to be exclusive, I think, selling the Lordstown electric truck at the Camping World stores. So feel free to any comments that you have on stuff that you want us to cover for next year. And certainly join us next week for what is going to be the highlight of our 3 years. We've been on 3 years. Come to next week, and our guest is going to be the president and CEO of Thor Industry, the world's largest RV manufacturer. So that's going to be a big show for us, and we certainly appreciate you joining us tonight. And our Jewish friends, have already celebrated Hanukkah. For the rest of us, Christmas and New Year's coming. We hope you wish a safe and healthy holiday season with your families. It's a little different, and a lot of us won't be able to see the family members that we would like to see, and that's unfortunate, but we got to get through all this nonsense. John, did you have something to close out with?
No, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being with us this year. It was a crazy year. There were a couple, back in March and April, we were doing 2 shows a week. There was so much going on, and hopefully we won't have to go back to that. Hopefully we'll get through this. We'll be able to resume regular programming and regular topics, and not have an asterisk next to everything. But you know what? Let's get through it, and stay safe, hug your family, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody. Talk to you next week.